You walk past the same security camera every single day. You don't even glance up at it anymore. Your brain stopped registering it weeks ago, filed away as part of the wallpaper, too familiar to be a threat. That feeling, the one where danger quietly turns into background noise, is not a flaw in your wiring. It is the exact same flaw that let one man walk away with the largest diamond heist in recorded history from inside a vault wrapped in motion sensors, infrared beams, and a lock with 100 million possible combinations. He didn't break in. He was already inside. And it would take years before anyone understood how. In February of 2003, an Italian man named Leonardo Notarbartolo emptied a vault beneath the Antwerp World Diamond Center, in the heart of Belgium's diamond district. The vault held loose stones, gold, and jewelry worth more than $100 million. By Monday morning, when an employee walked downstairs and found the door wide open, the thieves were gone, the cameras were blank, and the trail was already cold. But here's the part most people skip past. The robbery itself took a single night. The crime that actually mattered took years. Notarbartolo didn't show up with a drill and a getaway car. He showed up roughly 2 years earlier with a lease. He rented a small office inside that very building, posing as an Italian diamond merchant. The rental came with something far more valuable than square footage. It came with legal access to a safe deposit box inside the vault, and a reason to be seen in that building again and again without raising a single eyebrow. Think about that for a second. What does a man have to do to become invisible inside one of the most heavily guarded buildings on Earth? He doesn't sneak. He shows up every day. Same face, same nod to security, same casual small talk with the guards who slowly grew to like him. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And somewhere in that stretch of ordinary repetition, something shifted in the minds of the people paid to watch him. This is where the story stops being about diamonds and starts being about you. In 1968, a psychologist named Robert Zionk ran a series of experiments that quietly explain why this plan worked at all. Zionk found that the more a person is exposed to something, a face, a sound, a stranger in a hallway, the more familiar and the more harmless it begins to feel. Not because it has been proven safe, just because it has been seen before. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect, and it runs in the background of almost every relationship you have, including the one you have with risk itself. The guards at the Diamond Center weren't lazy. They weren't poorly trained. They were human. And human attention is not built to stay sharp against something that keeps showing up looking exactly the same. There's an older study that makes this even clearer. Back in 1948, a British psychologist named Norman Mackworth asked radar operators to watch a screen for hours, scanning for a single moving blip among thousands of identical sweeps. Within half an hour, their accuracy collapsed. Not because the task got harder, because nothing happened, and nothing happening is exhausting to watch for. Researchers now call this the vigilance decrement, and it explains something uncomfortable. The longer a threat fails to announce itself, the less your brain believes a threat exists at all. Notarbartolo never read a single paper on vigilance decrement. He simply gave the system exactly what breaks it: time. While he built familiarity upstairs, his crew worked in the dark, learning the rhythm of the building's locks, its cameras, its blind spots between shift changes. By his own later account, they planted a small hidden camera near the vault entrance, just to study the guards' habits and catch glimpses of routines as they repeated themselves. They learned which days the building allowed casual access without extra screening. Piece by piece, they discovered that the vault wasn't really being protected by steel. It was being protected by habit, and habits, once mapped closely enough, can be predicted. Why spend years on patience when a crowbar is faster? Because a crowbar gets noticed. Patience doesn't. On the night of February 15th, the crew made their move. By most accounts, they relied on nothing more dramatic than ordinary materials, things a person could buy without suspicion. To dull a sensor here, slow a lock there. None of it was flashy. All of it depended on one quiet advantage. The vault's defenses were built to catch a stranger, not someone the system had already decided to trust. By Sunday night, the vault was empty. By Monday, the building still looked untouched. Nothing had been forced. Nothing had been broken. The only thing missing was everything inside. Here's the part that should make you sit up. The thieves nearly got away clean. Not because investigators were careless, but because there was nothing obvious to follow. No broken glass, no forced door, no name on a lease that screamed criminal. What finally cracked the case wasn't a security system at all, it was a half-eaten sandwich. In their hurry to disappear, the crew discarded a bag of evidence in some roadside woods outside the city. Receipts, wrappers, paperwork, and traces that eventually pointed back to a name. A local farmer stumbled onto the pile and reported it. From there, investigators pulled one loose thread until the whole story unraveled, leading them back to the office upstairs, the friendly tenant, and years of quiet visits nobody had thought twice about. Notarbartolo was eventually arrested, tried, and sentenced to a decade behind bars. The vast majority of what disappeared from that vault was never recovered. To this day, nobody fully agrees on how much was actually taken or where it ended up. But notice what actually solved this case. It wasn't the 100 million possible combinations. It wasn't the infrared beams or the motion sensors. Those defenses were built for the wrong kind of danger, the dramatic kind, the kind that breaks down a door. They had no answer at all for a danger that simply waited, smiled, and slowly became part of the scenery. This is where the twist gets uncomfortable because it isn't really about diamonds anymore. In 1999, two psychologists, Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris, ran an experiment that's now famous for good reason. They asked people to watch a video of students passing a basketball and count the passes out loud. Halfway through, a person in a full gorilla suit walks directly through the middle of the scene. Roughly half of the viewers, locked entirely onto the task they were given, never see the gorilla at all. It isn't hidden. It isn't quick. By any honest measure, it should be impossible to miss, and still, attention quietly decides what counts as real. The guards at the Diamond Center weren't watching for a man in a gorilla suit. They were watching for someone who looked out of place. Notarbartolo simply made sure he never did. So what does this have to do with your life? You do this constantly, and not with diamond vaults. You do it with the coworker who's always been fine, even as small warning signs quietly pile up. You do it with the email from an address you've seen 100 times before, which is exactly why the 101st one, slightly altered, slips past you. Security researchers studying modern fraud have repeatedly found the same pattern playing out inside companies and homes alike. The most successful scams rarely look alarming. They look familiar. A voice that sounds almost right. A request that sounds almost normal. A face you feel like you already trust because you have, in some form, seen it before. Even Walter Mischel's famous patience experiments, run at Stanford in the early 1970s, point toward the other half of this same story. Children were left alone in a room with one marshmallow and a promise of two if they could simply wait. The children who waited weren't necessarily stronger-willed than the others. Many of them had simply found ways to make the waiting feel ordinary, looking away, distracting themselves, turning a hard moment into background noise until it passed. Notarbartolo did something eerily similar, only in reverse. He didn't wait out temptation. He waited out suspicion, turning his own presence into something so ordinary that it stopped registering as a question worth asking. That is the real heist, not the diamonds. The years spent convincing an entire security system that nothing was happening while something clearly was. It's a strange kind of comfort, in a way, to learn that a $100 million vault could be beaten, not by genius, but by the same mental shortcut that lets you tune out your smoke detector's low battery chirp after the third night in a row. The shortcut isn't stupidity, it's efficiency. Your brain cannot treat every repeated stimulus as a fresh emergency, or you would burn out by lunchtime. So it learns to stop looking. Most of the time, that's exactly the right call. Every so often, it's the only opening a patient enough stranger needs. So the next time you walk past that camera, without looking up, or wave off a strange feeling because it's probably nothing, remember what actually brought down the Antwerp vault. It wasn't a better lockpick. It wasn't a smarter way around an alarm. It was time, patience, and the oldest blind spot your brain owns, the one that quietly mistakes the familiar for the safe. You walk past the same camera every single day. Maybe, just once, it's worth looking up.